talk about quite often though is, you know, and this is where I will agree with the premise of some of the CLA stuff. When we drill, we give fake responses. And it's that fake response, picking up my hips so that I can go after the arm a little bit more, or the person on bottom, you know, because we're going at 35 miles an hour, not 150 miles an hour like we would if we were actually going after it. They're allowed to do things that they wouldn't normally do in response. And so we have to be very cognizant of that. And that's why it's the age-old phrase, drillers makes killers. I agree with that 100%. I mean, the ability of one person to hand off their knowledge to somebody else, I do think accelerates us in our learning process. But the move doesn't become yours until the resistance starts to set in, and you can actually learn how to overcome that resistance. So I've been finding, like I said, that when I can climb up specifically to put pressure on this shoulder, it's giving me more pressure on that shoulder. Because when we talk about Americana, this is always one of the interesting spots. So if I just did traditional and I'm here, okay, turn into the Americana. Right. So this is one of the ways that everybody gets rid of some of that tension. Lifting this shoulder to drop that shoulder. Because again, when we do an Americana or a Kimura, I mean, how's the lock actually work? People are going to be like, well, it's because the hand goes back here. No, it's not. It's, I can hold the hand in place and elevate the shoulder and get the same result. So there are some Americanas that we can do that literally float out in space. They don't have to go to the ground. I don't need his hand to touch the floor at all. So like if I'm in here and I can scoop Hans up slightly, and now when I'm in here, okay, the ground has absolutely nothing to do with the lock itself. It has nothing to do with my ability to pin him here. It's just getting the shoulder and hand, the hand to go to the negative space behind the shoulder. So if his shoulder is down, then I need the floor to become, and then that's why the lift becomes the piece. Now, when I'm working, and now I'm here pinning this shoulder down, look, he's already, so now, when I put him in play, this shoulder doesn't get to roll that way to alleviate the tension. And that's why it's kind of comical when you watch a bunch of it and you start to play with it, watch his hips. A lot of it, you'll start to see the hips coming up in the air because he's trying to get rid of whatever tension's going on over here. And this is how people, so again, before, when you go after it, you'll see people, they'll turn heavy on that one, that puts their elbow to the ground, gets them. But when we sprawl here, that shoulder becomes super tight. So when I'm here and I start coming in, and I'm going to go, okay, guess which hand typically comes over to think he's going to help out? Oh, and I say, thank you. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go from here. I'm just going to come in. I hook. In this instance through here now, I take my hand and I'm just going to start cupping into his armpit and even pulling it through. Biggest part is I want to keep that hook, okay? And now we're gonna lean into his shoulder, and we're gonna take the high elbow that's already there. So again, as I'm in, bump, bump, here's my step. So I can start to come in, there he is. Here's my anchor, so that it's hard for him to pull his arm back. And then I start running my hips, and then we climb. If he rolls, it gets better in my opinion, because at that point, when he rolls to try to alleviate the pressure, so far, I don't think anybody has really gotten out. That hand is running. So as long as I've got his hand, and I start to go here, this is where we end. My hip is still in his elbow, so if I continue my circle, as long as you're feeding the wrist goes behind the back. My pressure continues him, belly down. If he makes it belly down, and this happens when I'm going sometimes with some of the noon goons. You know, I hook the arm and I start to roll. Very few times this arm actually gets in the way, makes it very difficult for you to actually go belly down. And so then the hand goes behind the back, kind of traditional Kimura style. If they do go belly down, the hand is literally still stuck behind the back, and you've now gone actually completely behind them, and then I just choke. And now he's got a hand. And that's assuming you didn't want to just break the arm.
Yeah.
So, all right, shut.